Talal, thank you so much for being with us here at the USA House. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And, since it's the USA House and I travel to the US a lot, I thank you for not making it that long a trip. It's good.
Well, for starters, maybe not everyone is familiar with G42, so you can introduce our live audience globally about G42 and what it does in the UAE and globally.
Sure. So G42 is a collection of technology companies. We take on a significant part of the AI value chain, starting with the physical infrastructure. We have a company that does design, build, and operate for data centers called Khazna. Then there's the digital infrastructure, obviously your compute, your cloud platforms, both traditional cloud and the AI cloud. We can talk a little bit more about that. That's called Core 42. Then you have companies that are doing more solutions and applications, some that are building models like Inception, cybersecurity company that we also acquired not too long ago that is also helping us protect everything across the stack, but also provide that as a managed service. And then applications and solutions in many of the industry verticals that you can apply AI to, be it energy or healthcare, space, for instance, and other robotics.
And education with MBZUI that I recently joined.
Yes, so MBZUI is actually a very strong partner to us. They do a lot on the fundamental AI research. We do a lot more on the applied, but we combine forces quite a bit on things like the reasoning model we launched recently called K2 Think, or the Arabic language model, JACE. That's one of the most performant language models in a non-Latin-based language. So that's where we work very closely. And then obviously the human capital talent pool that we're able to tap into by virtue of having a university of that caliber in the UAE.
And also recently, the first world model ever released.
That's right. That's right. So I mean, when you think of where this thing is going in the future with embodied AI and physical AI, language is somewhat limited in what you can do. And so the world model is a mechanism to be able to create that foundational model basis that's a lot more image-based and multimodal, so that it could then support the advent of embodied AI and robotics.
And it's really noteworthy that the first ever world model to be open access and released comes from an academic organization based in the UAE.
Correct.
Speaks volumes about the geopolitics of AI. When one looks at the performance of the models, only three flags can be seen at the moment: USA, China, and the UAE.
Yeah, we're very lucky. I mean, the UAE is not, this didn't start yesterday or a year ago or even 5 years ago. It really started back in the late 2000s when the UAE, through one of the sovereign wealth funds, Mubadala, had taken a stake initially in AMD and now still till today have global foundries. And then fast forward 2017, we announced an AI minister. It was kind of unheard of, first of its kind in the world. And then around that time frame, G42 was born. So this is a natural progression to the diversification strategy that the UAE has been quite intentional about, and that's evolved into the technology space and now AI. And then if you look at the recent Microsoft report, they've had two, one in November and one more recently a few weeks ago. It's called the AI Diffusion Report from Microsoft, our very close partner. Abu Dhabi and the UAE are the highest per capita in terms of AI adoption globally. So, and Singapore was a close second. Mm-hmm. But this is just a testament to how AI is now starting to infuse every facet of society, just like every other preceding general purpose technology had done. And that's what we are, our ethos in G42 is to build the intelligence grid that is the digital infrastructure that underpins the enablement of AI native societies. And Abu Dhabi has set a vision to be the first AI native government globally by 2027.
You mentioned Core 42. You recently been named CEO. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Can you tell us a bit more about specifically what Core 42 does in the G42 ecosystem and also globally?
Yeah, so Core 42 is the digital infrastructure arm of the G42 family, like I said earlier. And what that really means is there are multiple different environments that you need to be able to underpin the enablement of AI and AI native societies. And so what Core 42 specifically does is we have a couple of different cloud environments, be it a private cloud for typically when you have top secret or secret data, you need some level of isolation, disconnected environment so that you could enable those types of environments, just like the US DoD does. Then you also need something that's a little bit more versatile and feature-rich. And when we combined efforts with Microsoft a few years ago, even predating their minority stake investment in G42, we created a new innovative way to solve the sovereignty issue on a public cloud. And so enabling sovereignty it's a very nuanced term. So data residency is one thing. Having data centers physically present in your country solves one problem, but sovereignty is a lot more nuanced because it's subject to extraterritorial jurisdictions that companies that come from certain countries may be subject to. So the way we were able to solve it with Microsoft is they had begun to adopt a new technology called confidential compute, which gives you encryption in memory in addition to encryption at rest and encryption in transit. And that full data lifecycle encryption allowed us to build a product on top of Microsoft Azure's public cloud backbone that enabled sovereignty in a sovereign control framework. And then you have an AI cloud, and this is what we're more familiar with today, whether it's AI accelerators like what we're doing with Cerebras, a startup from California that does a wafer scale engine, or GPUs like NVIDIA or AMD. And in our case, we're a heterogeneous AI cloud. So we're actually operating and deployed AMD, Qualcomm, Cerebras, and NVIDIA. And that's a way to attack the problem from a price performance standpoint rather than just be a one vendor company.
Yeah. And strategically also to gain a bit or keep a little bit of autonomy and not being tied just to one vendor and provider.
Yeah, it helps with the competitive tension that you can create.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you mentioned the physical centers. You and I were at the Air Action Summit last year that was organized by France, led by President Macron, and a big announcement was made, and you were at the core of it, no pun intended.
Yeah, we're very bullish on what we can do globally, not just in the UAE. So we have multiple deployments right now in the US, 5 deployments in 4 different states, but Europe is also very important to us. And the similar imperative to sovereignty that we faced in the UAE, we see in Europe, and we see across Africa and other places as well, and the global south writ large. And that is one of the things that I think we're very methodical in how we address. And so in France, in particular in a place called Grenoble in the south of France, we are deploying infrastructure AI infrastructure over there, and stay tuned. In the coming weeks, hopefully we'll have more to announce.
Yeah, I heard that. So that was one of the things that happened in 2025. What else can you share with us on the key achievements of Core 42 and G42 globally? Last year.
So I mean, we're in the USA House, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention President Trump's visit to the UAE in May of 2025. It was a quite pivotal moment for us because it was the culmination of about 2 or 3 years of sustained engagement with the US government and industry to ensure that we are able to become a force multiplier to what the US technology companies and ecosystem is trying to achieve. And so we announced the establishment of a US UAE 5 gigawatt AI campus. It's massive. It's probably around roughly 10 square miles in size. And it's going to have 5 gigawatts of clean energy, natural gas, solar, and then also obviously we've got the 4 nuclear reactors that are contributing today about 6 gigawatts of energy to the grid. And the concept there isn't to necessarily just serve the UAE. I mean, obviously, it's overkill if you wanted to use 5 gigawatts of energy to produce quadrillions of tokens to manufacture intelligence for domestic consumption. A significant portion of that will be exportable. And one of the key missions of G42 is to ensure we are providing equitable access to intelligence globally, to avoid what happened with the electricity paradigm. 140 years ago, electricity powered lower Manhattan. Till today, you have 770 million people without access to electricity. So you can't afford that type of digital divide in the AI space. And so exportability of these tokens that will be manufactured and generated in the UAE is key. And with low latency, high bandwidth connectivity, we can serve half the world's population in a 3,200 kilometer radius, sub 60 milliseconds. So many of the big hyperscalers, many of the model companies, look at OpenAI with Stargate UAE, the 1 gigawatt anchor client in that 5 gigawatt campus, are looking at the UAE to access that energy, access that location and the infrastructure around it to provide an inferencing supernode for their models and technologies.
It's impossible today to talk about AI without talking about geopolitics, and we're in the right place at the right time to talk about it. You and I were in Washington, D.C. last June for Enact. Then again, we were together for Enact in Abu Dhabi in November. And here in Davos, why do you think it's so important to have this conversation in this very place from the energy point of view, from the tech point of view, but also now a critical mineral conversation is so key?
Yeah, and by the way, on critical minerals in specific, but then more broadly, the whole AI industry that's dependent on critical minerals. Last week, the UAE signed the Pax Silica agreement with the US counterparts. The reason being in Davos is important is because there is no one country or one company that could do this on their own. Right. Even the UAE with the 5 gigawatt campus, it's a drop in the ocean in terms of what's really required to diffuse AI globally. We need more than 100, sometimes some estimates 500 gigawatts of energy globally. And today, in terms of AI data centers, there's probably roughly around 60 gigawatts. Now, if you deconstruct what it takes to build an AI data center, and you look at all the different layers from the power generation to the connectivity to the shell and core of a data center to the kit, which is roughly around 80%, that capex for a per gigawatt level basis is around $50 billion. And when you do the math, that's trillions of dollars of investment. So the collaboration that takes place here at Davos and companies like G42 that are kind of convening and aggregating different, not just technology partners, but even capital allocators through vehicles like MGX that are investing, help with the deployment of the capital that is required to build global AI infrastructure at scale. So that's where the value of being in Davos really comes.
Following Davos, there is 2026 ahead. So what does this look like for you guys? And what are the big challenges? I'm not going to ask you if you can share something exclusive, but if you want, you can. But
well, I think
what's the plan?
I think it's fairly obvious that over the last few years, we spent a lot of our time trying to ensure that we are inspiring the right level of confidence, particularly with our US counterparts, not just the companies, but the US government, when it comes to accessing this consequential technology. And just like we did during the nuclear 123 agreement, that's a consequential technology that required a level of protection and a security envelope. Similarly with AI, it took a long and concerted effort to get to a point where in November we were awarded licenses for the first batch of NVIDIA GB300s to the UAE. And that's a function of really having a very specific way to ensure that we were protecting the imperatives that the US government had in terms of that technology, both physical and logical security. Now, deploying this technology is the next step. How do you monetize it? It's this huge capex that we're going to be spending. So part of my role at Core 42 and part of what G42 and the UAE is really focused on is actually putting this to work. And so a lot of 2026 is going to be focused on deployment, doubling down on our partnerships so that we could also provide opportunities for them to deploy their own infrastructure in the UAE and continue to grow our international footprint as well.
Well, thank you for making the time to be with us, for sharing all these insights. And I'll see you again very soon on global events and look forward to tracking all the great things that are happening in the UAE at the university and the partnership between G42 and the university, the models to come, and improving the state of the world with AI and the right infrastructure. Talal, Kaissi.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.